Hi everyone. So in the previous lectures we have seen what are the database characteristics or the functionalities, and in this lecture we will see the different types of users who are using this database system, and also like what are the advantages of database approach compared to the traditional file system, and the history of database systems. Okay, so in the previous lectures we have defined different functionalities, right? So what is the main functionality of the database system? Like defining, then constructing, manipulating and sharing, right? For the small applications this can be done by the single user. Okay, so all these operations can be performed by a single user. But if you take a large application where you require to store or you have to load lot of information and you have to design so many features for that application, then by a single user it is not possible. So there may be a different types of users who are involved in creating and maintaining the databases. Okay, so users may be divided into those who actually use and control the content. That means the information you are storing in the database. So that is the content. Okay, and those who enable the database to be developed and the DBMS software to be designed and implemented. Okay, so there are two types, two categories we can divide or we can define. One is actors on the scene. That means who are dealing with the content of the database, about the information, how you are going to store or how you will do that or how you will define it. So for that we have actors on the scene, and then the users who are involved in developing or maintaining the softwares related to the DBMS, those are called as workers behind the scene. Actors means who actually use and control the content of the database. Okay, and workers behind the scene means they are actually related to maintain the software or developing some software tools for supporting database management system. Okay, now we'll see one by one. First we'll see actors on the scene and then workers behind the scene. Actors on the scene, so here we have database administrators, then database designers, end users and the software engineers. So database admins, what they will do? The main role or the job of the admin is to authorize for different users. Okay, like authorizing access to the database for various users. Like you need to create a multiple users and you need to provide the access to them. Only a particular information they can access, like that you have to give a permission. Okay, you have to assign a group of users and what content they can access, that has to be defined. So who will do that? So that will be done by the database administrators. Okay, and for coordinating and monitoring its use, then acquiring the software and hardware resources and controlling the entire usage of that system and finding like how it can be efficiently used, so that thing can be done by the database admin. You might have seen like what is the role of or main job of the admin in the technical labs. They are related to like system maintenance, all those things, but here we are talking about database admin. So their job is to authorize the access for the particular user and then coordinate and monitor the entire process. Okay, entire database operations. And then database designers, so these people are responsible to define the content and the structure. Then we have a constraints and functions and different transactions we are using. So all these will be defined by the database designers. Like what all the things must be there in the application when you develop the entire database application, then what are the things must be included or what are the features must be included, that must be defined first. So that will be done by the database designers. Okay, so in software engineering you already studied, like you'll be having the requirement specification or the collection, and then you'll go for the design, right? So that means you have to collect or you have to understand what is the requirement by the end user, what they want. So depending on their need, you will add the features. So designer, what they will do, they will see, okay, for example, in online application, you want to do some transaction. So how that transaction should look like, how the pages should look like, or what are the data it has to fetch. So that you have to collect, and accordingly the designer will make a proper design for that database. Like what all the content should be there, that he will decide. And what all the constraints you have to add, that is also decided by the designer. Then we have the end user. End user means usually they will use the application for fetching the information. Usually they will place the query or the request, and they will fetch the information, and they will generate the reports. Okay, and some of them actually update the database content. So end user means the normal user. If I give some application to you, then how you will use? So you will be acting as an end user. Just you will fetch some details, or you will update some information there, or after fetching the information, you will generate the report. So that kind of job you will do, right? So those people will be called as end users. Then the next is system analyst and application programmers. These two people together called as software engineers. Okay, system analyst and application programmers. Now system analyst, what he will do? So he will determine the requirements of the end user, especially for the parametric end users. I'll explain the different types of end users in the next slide. So here there is a type of end user. He is called as parametric end user. Parametric means they are using only the canned transaction. Okay, that means, for example, if you take ATM machine, so there the transactions are already fixed. It will perform only the predefined set of activities, right, or the functions, like checking the balance or withdraw. So these are fixed. It cannot perform more than that. So those are called as canned transaction. Canned, C-A-N-N-E-D, canned transaction. So for those people, like first the designer will collect all the information, and accordingly he has to design, right? So here system analyst, he'll identify, or he'll find out what are the requirements of the parametric end users, like how they want that canned transaction. Okay, and once they form the requirements, then application programmer, he will implement these. Okay, he will implement these specification as a programs, and then he will test, debug and document, then maintain these canned transactions. So software engineer's job is to find the requirements, or collect, or recognize or determine the different requirements from the end user, and then frame the proper model for that, and then application programmer will start programming, or he will do the coding for that, and then he'll test, debug, then document, and then maintain the canned transactions. Okay, so these are the jobs of system analysts and application programmers. Now, next we'll see what are the different types of end users. That means categories of end users. So here we have a casual end user. Casual means the user or the end user, he will access this database very occasionally. Okay, for example, you take manager or executive officer. He needs some information. For example, like monthly report he want to check, or like in yearly how much profit they have gained, that he want to check. So then only monthly or yearly he will open the system and he will check the details. Okay, so in that case such users will be called as casual end users. Then comes naive or parametric. As I said, these kind of users are using the CAN transaction. They will perform CAN transaction. That means there is a menu-based interface will be there, and those operations are fixed. They cannot perform any other things. So using that menu-driven interface, they will execute the transactions. Okay, and here the functions must be well defined. Only if, for example, if you want to do online purchase means, for that what all the requirements, so that will be modeled clearly. Okay, and you should know how to use that, or how to, or which option you have to select, so that you should know as a naive or parametric end user. So in casual, you should know only the basic set of queries, the specific queries you should be thorough with, like how to write the specific query like in SQL language. But for naive or parametric, just they'll use some menu-driven applications or top-down list or something. So using that, they will perform the task. Okay, and then the next is sophisticated end user. Sophisticated means here you consider the scientists or engineers or other people who are involved in the research. So they need to perform a very complex computations, correct? They are doing a lot of computations. So for them, just if you give the command line interface, that is enough. Like they should know each and everything, like how to write the queries, what are the advanced options are there. So they must be knowing. Then only they can use the they can make use of that particular application. Okay, that means they must be the expert in the query languages. Then standalone. Standalone means, for example, you are filling some tax details. Okay, you are filing your income tax. Some applications will be there for tax filing. So you will install that app in your laptop or the system and you will use it. So that is the standalone application. You are installing it in your system and you are using it. So no need of knowing all the concepts of query languages or something like that. Only you should know how to use the application. Okay, you should know how to use the application which is there in your system. Okay, so these kind of people will be called as standalone users. Now, workers behind the scene. So there are three types of workers behind the scene: DBMS system designer and implementers, then tool developers, operators and maintenance personnel. Now, who are the system designers? So they will design different DBMS modules and interfaces and as a software package. What does mean by this? So for example, if you take in DBMS you have a recovery system, then backup and recovery system, then protection module, and then we have optimization module, query processing module. So the DBMS system designer and the implementers, they are the people who are involved in the implementation of these modules. Are you getting? So you need to add different modules to the existing DBMS, right? It should provide security, safety, or protection, access permission, all those things, right? So for that, you need to add the different modules or the software packages to the existing DBMS software. Okay, so that will be carried out by DBMS system designers and the implementers. Then tool developers. Here tool means like the supporting tool you want to implement. For example, in the DBMS, if you take the application of DBMS, in that, for example, you want to design the entire model. Okay, you want to design an entire model. So you need a graphical tool. Okay, for example, you have a UML design tools where you can draw the UML diagrams, right? So such kind of tools, like for example, in some systems you can check the performance and the speed of the processor. Some tools will be there, right? So such add-on tools has to be included in the DBMS software so that you can easily use the application or the softwares, right? So that's why tool developer, they are involved in implementing the tools, like supporting tools for the DBMS, okay, which facilitates database modeling and the design, database system design, okay, and it also improves the performance of the entire database design. Then the next is operators and maintenance personnel. These people are responsible for the actual running and maintenance of the hardware as well as the software which you are using in the system, like the maintenance engineers. Okay, they will take care of everything. If there is some crash or if something goes wrong in the hardware device, so who will take care of that? So that will be taken care by the operators and the maintenance personnel. Then now we'll see what are the advantages of using the DBMS approach. So I have listed so many advantages. Briefly, I will explain what all these things. Controlling redundancy in data storage and in development and maintenance efforts. What is meant by redundancy? Redundancy means you are repeating the same information, like copy, correct? So you compare the traditional file system and the DBMS. In traditional file system, what happens? You have one copy of a file, okay, one copy of a file. Now it is there in the main office. Now the person who is sitting in the branch, some other branch, he wants the file or the copy of that file to refer something. Then the main office people will xerox it, or they will give a copy of the actual file and they'll provide that to a branch. Okay, now what happens? The same information, right? The same information you have in two different systems, correct? If I take a file system as a like normal your Excel or Word document, then the same copy will be stored in two different places, correct? But in DBMS, what happens? It will have a centralized approach. That means only one copy will be there. You will share that among different people. Okay, so in that way, it will control the redundancy in the data storage, because only in one place you're storing it, and when you're developing it or maintaining effort will also be reduced, because only one place you have to maintain everything. Okay, then the second point is restricting unauthorized access to the data. As I said, there are different kind of people or the group of users. So according to the user need, you have to give the access permission. But in file system, whether it is possible, for one file you have, and can you tell the person who is, for example, say the person with name Nitin, okay? So Nitin can edit, and one more person, Suhas, can write. So like that, can you do? It's not possible, right? Can you give only the portion of the file to one person and another person? It is not possible. But here in database, what happens? You can restrict the unauthorized access. Okay, you can say only the particular field can be accessed by the set of people. Then the next point is providing persistent storage for program objects. So what does mean by persistent storage? In normal programming language, if you use, what happens is, if you take the example of C++, so there you have a class and the object. So those object will be allocated with the memory when it is created. when you just create an object, it will be allocated with the storage, right? Now when you exit the program, okay, when you exit the program, so that allocated memory will be erased or it will be deallocated, and you will not get the same object again, is it not? So what happens now? What does mean by persistent then? Persistent means even the program exits or terminates, still you can find the objects in the memory or the storage. So that's why it is called persistent object or persistent storage. Okay, so I'll give the persistent storage for the program objects. So in object-oriented databases, there is a concept of OP or like object-oriented concepts you will be using in object-oriented databases. There you will be using the concept of persistent storage. So even though the program exits, still you can find the objects in the storage. And then the next is providing storage structures for efficient query processing. Like there is a query optimization engine, so which will take care of query optimization or like how to execute efficiently. So that will be handled by the query optimization engine. And also we have a indexes. Okay, index means using that you can directly access the particular record. So no need to traverse sequentially. So that is provided in database systems. And then providing backup and recovery services. So there is a separate modules for backup and recovery in the DBMS. And then we have providing multiple interfaces to different classes of users. Now, as I said, the parametric, for example, in end user, we have casual, naive or parametric, then sophisticated, standalone, right? Now, if you take standalone people or standalone users, so they are using the dedicated tools or the softwares which are installed in their system. So they need some graphical user interfaces. It should be like very attractive or easy to use. And then if you take parametric, as I said, they are performing only the CAN transactions. So in that case, they can use only the set of menus or the buttons, that is enough. So your user interface should look like menu-driven user interface. And then the next one is sophisticated. So for them, they are actually very knowledgeable person, or they know everything about the query languages. So just they want to use the command line interface. That is enough for them. Just they will directly type their queries there and they'll execute the commands. So only command line interface is enough for the sophisticated user. So depending on the different types of users, so here there is a provision to provide multiple interfaces. Then the next point is representing complex relationships among the data. Now what is the complex relationships here? For example, you take the actual table, for example, student table. If you take student, and then we have a grade table where you are storing the marks or the grade of each student. Now here you need to relate these two. Okay, you need to relate these two. So for that we can use the different constraints. The same thing comes under in the next point also the same thing will come, like enforcing integrity constraints on the databases. That means if I change some data in one table, it should be reflected in another table or in another file. Okay, suppose one of the student leaves from the college. Okay, so he withdraws his course and he leaves the college. Then that should be reflected in the department file also. If you go for traditional systems, what happens? Traditional file system. So if I change the information in the file which is there in admin section, okay, So there is a system there, they have kept one file and they have maintained all the information. They have deleted that student information. Okay. Now, what happened to the department file? Whether they will get to know whether there is a change in the file externally or explicitly, someone has to tell, then only they will get to know, and manually they will delete the record from the department file. But in the database management system, what happens is, once if you delete from one place, because it is a centralized, right? So if you delete in one time, if you delete, so it will be reflected everywhere, because others are using only the virtual view of that database. Okay, only the virtual view will be given to the different users, not the actual one. So whatever changes we are making, so that will be reflected everywhere. And then enforcing integrity constraints on the database, like for example, you are changing the information of the student, okay, and that student ID is there in another file. Now take the example, the student file has student name, USN, SEM and the subjects, and in another file you are storing the grade information or the marks information, where you have a USN and the different subjects marks. Okay, how much marks he has scored in each subject, that will be stored separately. Now when I change the USN, for example, for a particular student, if I delete the record of a particular student from the student information or the file, then automatically it has to delete that student's grade from the grade file. Okay, these two informations are related, right? Student USN is there in student file and also in the grade report. So if that student does not exist or he leaves the college, means I am deleting student information from student file. So automatically it should be reflected in the grade file. So how it will be done? If you take the normal file system, you have to see, okay, so this particular student has been deleted from the student file, then search for that USN in the grade file and delete it. But if you place some constraints like integrity constraints, then whenever I delete that USN from the student file, then automatically it will delete the information from grade file. So wherever it is referring that USN, so that information will be deleted automatically. Okay, so that is another advantage of using DBMS. Then the last one is permitting inferencing and actions using rules. Rules means like you can specify how the fetch or retrieval can happen in the application, or how you can insert the values, or what are the specific guidelines or the instructions you can specify for a particular record. For example, if I say whenever I retrieve the marks of a student, it should be, or whenever I insert the values to the student, it should be within 20 marks, or maximum is, if I set maximum as 20, means I should not enter more than 20. Okay, so such rules I can specify. And so USN, for example, USN should be unique, or USN should have 2 characters followed by 8 digits. So such rules we can specify using DBMS assertions. Okay, and also we can use the trigger concept. Trigger means if I insert the values, or if I add some information to the database, or if whenever I update the information, or like whatever the data manipulation operations we are doing on the database, that time it should give the error messages, or it should pop up the error messages if there is a violation in the manipulation. Okay, so whenever there is a violation against this insertion or deletion or updation, then it has to show the error. Okay, it should not allow you to do the execution, or it should not allow the successful execution in that case. Okay, it should identify what mistakes you are doing. If you take the example, the SEM you have set as total you have eight SEMs, right, semesters. So you cannot insert the value which is greater than 8. Or one more example, if you take, you have defined the salary of the employees. Okay, salaries of the employees, where the salary of employee, for example, the normal employee, it should not be greater than the supervisor's salary, right? So when you are defining the data type, you have defined, okay, it can be like 5 digit or 10 digit, whatever it may be, but that means integer data type you have defined. But when you insert the value, you have to see that if he is a normal employee, then his salary should not be greater than his supervisor or the manager. Okay, so suppose if you enter the salary greater than the supervisor, then it should not allow the insertion operation. Okay, so it should give the error message. So that kind of action will be called as triggering. Okay, so that is the most beautiful concept used in the DBMS to check whether you are inserting or you are performing the different manipulation operations, whether it is correct or not. That can be identified by the triggers. Then additional implications of using the database approach. So here we have the first point is potential for enforcing standards. That means in the enterprise, the entire information you are storing it in one place means it will have a standard, right? So all the data must be same, or like it will have a general format. If I take a different file systems, then what happens? In one department, they will say name should be 15 characters, and in another department, they will say name can contain 20 characters. So they will define according to them. But if I go for database, what happens? Everything will be standardized. Only in one format it will be stored. So that's why there is no confusion in the data, or there is no overlapping in the data. Okay, and then reduced application development time. So here, once the database is designed and it is put into use, then if you want to add some more things, then the adding the extra features to the database will be very easy. It will not take much time. Okay, so simply you have to add the extra features to the definition. You have to modify the definition itself. But you will not delete the entire definition, just you will go for modifying the existing database system. Okay, so for example, in the next point, it is saying flexibility to change the data structures. That means if you are adding a new kind of users or new set of users, they want a different kind of applications or the transactions they want to do. Then you will keep the existing application as it is. Whatever they want, it can be separately implemented and it can be clubbed with the existing one. Okay, so for example, initially we have only the regular students information, and then suppose college wants to store the alumni information, then separately they can add. Then for alumni group only they can give that information, right? So that is the kind of flexibility that DBMS provides. Then availability of up-to-date information. So as I said, the database the main property is it represents the actual world or the mini world. Whatever changes happen in the whatever changes happens in the mini world, that will be reflected in the database, right? So here, that is availability of up-to-date information means whenever there is a change in the physical objects or whatever entities you are having in the database, so that information will be automatically updated in the database. Okay, so it will be up to date. Then the last point is economies of scale. Here, as I said, you are using the standard form, right? So everything will be standardized. The data, whatever you are using, it is standardized. It is kept in one place. There is no ambiguity, and there is no overlapping between different departments or the resources or the personnel. So in that way, you can consolidate the data and application across all the departments. So it will eliminate any redundant work while creating the database. Or if you are storing in the file system, is redundantly you are storing, that will be avoided in this case. Now we'll see the brief history of database applications. So the early database applications, they used hierarchical and network models, and these were introduced in 1960s. And then relational model-based systems were introduced. It is introduced in 1970, and now also we are using it. And then the next is object-oriented applications. As I said, object-oriented concepts also you can add to the database. So that can be achieved using object-oriented application, object-oriented DBMS. And then the data on the web, like we are using XML. Okay, this XML can be used in web applications or e-commerce application. So this gives the new set of applications and e-commerce, they uses XML for storing the data information as well as for the web design. Now the next is extending database capabilities. So what are the new features we can add or the extra things we can add to the normal database systems? So we can use this DBMS for scientific applications, image storage and management, then audio video data management, data mining we can do, then spatial data management, time series and historical data management. So in the previous session only I told you can store not only the normal text or the textual information. Instead of that, you can store along with that you can store image, audio, or the graph, or geographical information also you can store, and the time series data you can store. Okay, so for different or various kinds of data can be stored in the database, and it can be managed. Then okay, so till now we have seen what are the advantages, where we have to use, what are the properties. Now when not to use a DBMS, when it is not suitable, when we cannot, or when it is not suitable for application, that also we can see. So main inhibitors of using a DBMS is if you require high initial investment, okay, and that means, and also you need extra or very sophisticated hardware, then don't use DBMS. Okay, so if there is a high initial investment and the new sophisticated hardware you have to interface, then don't use the DBMS. Then if there is the overhead because of achieving concurrency control or maintaining the integrity of functions, then also don't go for DBMS. Then when a DBMS may be unnecessary, that means if the application is very simple, you are not storing a lot of information, only small amount of data you are storing in the storage. So in that case, no need of DBMS. Normal file system is enough. If there are real-time requirements that may not be met because of DBMS overhead, then also don't use. And the third point is, if access to data by multiple users is not required, only you are the user who is going to use that information or the data, means don't go for database. Simply you can store it in your system or wherever you feel convenient and you can use it. Then when no DBMS may suffice, that means if the database system is not able to handle the complexity of the data, maybe like some limitations will be there. Because of that, you cannot use the DBMS. Okay, and if the DBMS users need special operations which are not supported by the DBMS, then also we cannot go for database management systems. So these are the points where you cannot use the, or it's not preferable to use the DBMS. Now these are the review questions, like what is database, describe the characteristics of database, then define DBMS, discuss the advantages of DBMS over traditional file system. So whenever you whenever you try to differentiate the DBMS over the traditional file system, you just keep in mind that file system is like, it is not centralized, but DBMS is a centralized. Okay. Then the next question is, what are the additional implications of using database approach? Already we have discussed it. Then explain different types of database users. Like you have actors on the scene and workers behind the scene, so both you have to explain. Okay, different types of end users. Sometimes they may ask only the different types of end users. Don't confuse with this these two terms. End user means only 4 types you can write under end user. If it is asked for different types of database users, then you have to explain workers behind the scene as well as actors on the scene. Okay, so this completes the introduction. Now that means in module 1, the first chapter, so that is done with this lecture. Thank you.